My name is Dr. Nicole Hayes. I'm a staff psychologist at CAPS, a member of the eating disorders team and also the athletics team. So I spend a lot of my days talking about food, talking about bodies. I run some of the disordered eating groups, and I'm really excited to be giving this little presentation on weight bias in the medical community.
And hi, my name is Dr. Lola Martin. I am a postdoctoral fellow at CAPS, and I'm also a member of the eating disorder team. So Dr. Hayes and I are here today to talk to you about weight stigma, fatness, and the medical community. I do want to acknowledge that I am somebody who lives in a smaller body and has access to some thin privilege. But this is also a topic that I'm really passionate about. I think that it's very important to me because I see the impact that it has. And I've also been in a position to witness some of the opportunities for change when we do challenge and resist diet culture.
Mm-hmm. Similarly, as someone who lives in a smaller body, I think this is something that impacts all of us, right? That this is, talking about weight stigma is something that we've seen in children as young as 3 and 5. Right? If we start seeing this research about how, really young kids view people who live in larger bodies, right? They view them as maybe lazy, unmotivated, all sorts of negative things that when, we're thinking about the medical community, this has been ingrained for much, much longer. And so it's no surprise that we really see some drastic consequences when people in larger bodies do seek out medical care. Their healthcare providers treat them differently, right? That they might, be, they go to a medical provider and the medical provider doesn't listen to them. Thinking about how it would be to go to seek out healthcare because you feel that something's wrong and not be listened to. And so the diet culture that is so pervasive in our communities can really make it difficult for people in larger bodies to seek medical care, which can in turn have these really significant health consequences, just when we're thinking about equal access.
Mm-hmm. And these experiences are not only really problematic, but they also intersect with other identity pieces, including gender, race, ability status, and they do real harm. So weight stigma is related to heightened mortality. It's also associated with a number of chronic diseases and conditions because of some of the discrimination that comes with that for folks who do live in larger bodies. And most ironically, it actually is correlated to a heightened risk of so-called obesity. And that's due to higher levels of cortisol or stress hormones, lower motivation for exercise, increased risk for mood disorders, and poorer management of chronic health conditions. Weight stigma is also significantly a leading risk factor in the development of eating disorders and a significant barrier to accessing appropriate treatment.
Yeah, so weight stigma, we talk about weight stigma as though it's something that only impacts people that lives in larger bodies. And that, again, thinking about diet culture, thinking about how this is something that we've all been raised to think since childhood, this impacts all of us, no matter what our body size is. And so for people who live in smaller bodies, just kind of the fear of weight gain that we've been socialized to believe is the worst thing in the world, right? Going to the doctor, and if the doctor says, oh, you're up this number of pounds since the last time you came to the appointment, suddenly it's a problem, right? Suddenly that you might feel that you have to lose weight. And then, like Dr. Martin said, that this is kind of one of the leading causes of eating disorders. And eating disorders can impact people no matter what their body size. But eating disorders is not something that's just limited to people with a fear of gaining weight, but we see eating disorders across the eating disorder spectrum, across the body size spectrum. And so this is something that is really important. One of the things that when you go to see a healthcare provider, they always talk about is BMI. And BMI is something that we wanted to talk about because it is one of my least favorite things in the entire world. I think BMI is truly, truly trash. And so BMI is basically a measure of what is your height versus what is your weight. Let's stick it into a ratio. Don't remember the exact mathematical formula because it's not really relevant. But the idea that BMI is the number that your doctor is going to see first. When you go see a healthcare provider, that's something that they see before they even meet you. That's something that leads them to think, okay, how am I going to view this person? If they have a higher BMI, that healthcare providers going in with preconceived notions about what might be wrong, right? That if, it's not the problem that you're going in with, but it's that your weight is a problem. And BMI doesn't take so many things into account. BMI doesn't take into account muscle mass. BMI doesn't take into account kind of variations in cultural body size. And BMI also is such a narrow range of what's kind of okay. What's in that like normal range is this big. And what's in the bad range, that overweight or obese range, is this much. And so it puts people in this position where they have to feel that they maybe have to change their bodies to fit into something that really doesn't actually matter.
Mhm. The other thing that I've found out about BMI is that it's actually quite arbitrary, that categories for what's considered healthy or unhealthy have changed significantly over time, in a very arbitrary way, but that in a way that does support diet culture and some of folks who gain from that within the medical industrial complex. And that can include physicians, nurses, dietitians, it can include therapists and psychologists. And so part of that is that when you are in the healthcare system, oftentimes dieting and weight management approaches are advocated for. And what I want to share today is that we know that these approaches are not sustainable in terms of weight loss. And that they cause people to feel like they're not entitled to their bodies. There's only one right way to have a body. And what I want to briefly introduce is another model or another way of thinking about this, which is really at odds with the traditional medical model. And that is the health at every size or Hayes model. This promotes the idea, which is very well supported in research literature, that people can be healthy at every body size, that body size and weight is not a reliable indicator of health. And the Hayes model encourages a different way of honoring your body's set point in terms of where it is that your body wants to be with respect to weight, shape, size. Instead of using punishing over exercise or dieting to try to feel like you have to change your body to have the right type of body or to have access to health and what that means culturally. Instead, this encourages folks to find joy in gentle movement, find a flexible, attuned way of being with food, and knowing that being thinner doesn't necessarily make us healthier or happier.
Yeah, I think, the health at every size model is fantastic, and more people are learning about it, more people are incorporating it. And I think that is starting to change the conversation about weight stigma. Obviously, this isn't something that's going to change overnight, but as we talk about it, as we talk about fat phobia and anti-fat bias, these are things that, we want to change in the world. And that we know that, weight stigma has such significant consequences. We talk about the stress of, not being able to access medical care, the stress of the world viewing you in a certain way and what that does to a person. And so starting to change these conversations is so important to change health outcomes.
Mhm. And we're really calling on everybody to know that you are entitled to self-advocacy, that you are entitled to protection against weight stigma and to good, comprehensive medical care. And that might mean that you have to educate your healthcare providers, but there are a lot of resources out there in the world to help you do that. There's a large online community of support. And we have attached just a few of those resources here on the White Rise website. So we would invite everyone to please go ahead and read more to try to advocate for change in this thing that is really harmful in the world. And thank you for watching.